But first to this breaking news, WA Liberal MP Andrew Hastie and Victorian Liberal Senator James Paterson have been barred from entering China on a study tour planned for December. The trip to Beijing had been planned by China policy think tank China Matters. Joining me now is Victorian Liberal Senator James Paterson, who has found out the news. James, welcome to the program. James, what's your reaction to the news?
It's disappointing, Patricia. Both Andrew and I were really looking forward to a genuine, good faith dialogue with the people that we were going to be meeting in Beijing. It would have been an opportunity for us to listen and to hear from those that we met to better understand the Chinese perspective on the world, and also an opportunity for us to share our perspective and including some of our concerns about the Chinese Communist Party.
When and how did you find out that it was cancelled?
China Matters called me this afternoon and they told me that the Chinese embassy in Australia had told them that neither Andrew nor I would be welcome in China.
But there are others that were going on that study trip that can go, is that right?
I believe that China Matters has decided to cancel the trip, given that 2 of the 3 MPs who were invited have been told that they're not welcome.
In your joint statement with Andrew Hastie that you've released, you say we look forward to a time when the Chinese government realises it has nothing to fear from honest discussion and the free exchange of ideas. That's quite a provocative statement, isn't it?
We don't believe it is, Patricia, and we didn't intend it to be provocative at all. All we intended to say by that statement is that there's nothing to fear on behalf of the Chinese government from people like Andrew and I travelling to Beijing, visiting China and engaging in a genuine good faith discussion with Chinese counterparts. Yes, we would raise areas of disagreement between Australia and China and divergences between our values, but we'd also take the opportunity to talk about the good things about the relationship between Australia and China.
There is a statement from the think tank that says that, disappointingly, the media attention that ensued created an environment which was no longer conducive to the goal of facilitating low-key discussions. Did you make an error by being very public about this study trip, meaning that it essentially was jeopardised?
It wasn't my choice or Andrew's choice for our invitation by China Matters to become public. I don't know how that was leaked to the West Australian newspaper, but somebody chose to inform the West Australian newspaper without consulting us. And once the news was out there, I thought the only thing that we could do in that circumstance is be honest about why we were going and what we're hoping to achieve from the trip.
OK, so when that news was out there, obviously then you started making some public comments that drew attention to the trip. Do you believe that that is when the decision was made that they wanted to cancel? I mean, what kind of contribution did that make?
Well, I don't think they would have missed the first article, which is on the front page of the West Australian newspaper, and I doubt any further interviews I did, including on your program, Patricia, would have drawn any extra attention to it than it already had. And what I said at the time and what Andrew has been saying consistently is actually the things we've been saying for years, which is we are concerned about the events in Hong Kong. We are concerned that there are up to 1 million Uyghur Muslims detained in Xinjiang province. We are concerned that as an Australian citizen, Dr Yang Hengjun, who's been detained on what we believe are spurious grounds. We're concerned about the treatment of Tibet. We're concerned about the treatment of Taiwan. And it's important that Australian politicians are able to be open and honest about our values, about our national interest and about our sovereignty.
Andrew Hastie wrote a very controversial column, as you know, a column that talked about or compared the rise of China to the rise of Nazi Germany. That was a pretty provocative column. Is that at the centre of this decision, do you think?
What Andrew was writing about was about the West's response to the changing power dynamics in the 20th century. And the point that he made was that Western powers at the time were complacent about a rising power, which was Germany, and the way that they wanted to change the global order. And the point that he was making is that we have another rising power that also wants to change the global order. We're not in any way equating China with Nazi Germany. There are obviously very profound historical differences, and I don't think historical comparisons between Nazi Germany and any other country are appropriate. But we do need to learn from history, and we can't not speak about history because it's sensitive, because we have to understand the lessons of history.
Sure, but do you accept that that column may have been at the heart of why the Chinese government has decided that Andrew Hastie is not welcome and neither are you?
That might be the case, Patricia, and if that's the price for speaking out, for being honest with our constituents about our concerns, about our relationship with China, then that's the price that I'm sure Andrew's willing to pay and I'm willing to pay.
You've also been outspoken about Hong Kong, and in fact you just reiterated some of your concerns about other issues beyond Hong Kong and the treatment of protesters there. Do you think that's why you've been rejected?
That might be the case, but it won't deter me at all from speaking out about the events of Hong Kong, because I think Hong Kong is one of the most amazing places in the world, and I think what's happening in Hong Kong is an absolute tragedy. And unfortunately, I think the Chinese Communist Party bears some responsibility for that.
Of course, the government's been trying to repair relations with China, given, of course, our economy relies so heavily on that relationship. What does this decision by Beijing mean for those relations? I mean, this is a pretty significant roadblock in that rebuilding process, isn't it?
It's certainly disappointing that two members of the Australian Parliament have been banned from visiting China. There's no question about that. But I hope that our relationship will continue to improve, as you say, as it has been, because it is an important relationship. And I think one of the things that's important about making sure that relationship improves is an understanding on both sides that we are free to speak out, we are free to be honest about the differences and values that we have, and we're both free to prosper from the lucrative trading arrangements that we have.
Will you try to go again?
I don't think any other invitations will be forthcoming in the short term, Patricia, but I hold out hope.
Of course, because you don't plan to change your views. That's the point you're making, isn't it?
Well, certainly neither I or Andrew will be resiling from our views. It would be a betrayal of our constituents and our values if we pretended that we didn't have the concerns that we do. I think we have to always be honest about that.
But do you accept that you've put the Morrison government, Maurice Payne, the Foreign Minister, in perhaps a difficult, tricky situation now?
I don't think we have, but ultimately, Patricia, one of the things about a liberal democracy is that members of parliament are obliged to speak out on matters of concern. It's of great interest to our constituents, I know by the feedback that both Andrew and I receive. And yes, democracy can be a bit messy at times, but I wouldn't trade it for any other system.
And does this indicate to you that your concerns around the rise of China and the Chinese democracy are real? And there's evidence for why you should be concerned if you've been banned like this?
I don't think it sends a good signal at all that China is not willing to hear from us about our perspective, and nor even willing to allow us to visit China to hear their perspective.
What would you have done if you went there? I mean, were you a threat? Were you going to go and challenge all of these issues? Was that your intention?
All we were going to do is engage in good faith dialogue with the interlocutors that we had been set up with to meet with. We weren't planning to do anything other than have a conversation.
Senator James Paterson, thank you so much for joining us on the Friday Fix.
Thank you for having me.